it would be good. Does this work? I gotta hold my mouth right like fishing. If it doesn't, oh, whoop, whoop, look at you. You did it. Good job. Whoop, whoop, spoke too soon. Come on. Toward me. Come on. There we go. Yes. What were we just talking about? Oh, yeah. We are live. No. Jacksonville are cracking me up. We're not even Tallahassee. Walked in 3 minutes still. And I got here, everybody's already here. I came in the wrong door. I'll give you my file.
Good evening. It's such a joy to welcome y'all to All Saints. It is really a joy for us to host this evening tonight, so thanks for being here. Just a couple of sort of housekeeping announcements. One is our bathrooms are probably not where you would expect them to be. They are in the building behind us. So if you need a restroom, you can go out these doors. This one if you want to stay out of the rain, and go to the building behind us. That's where our restrooms are. If you need Wi-Fi, it is Sanctuary is the name of the Wi-Fi. And it's all Saints, all lowercase, All Saints, #4. So if you need that. Any other questions about our space or anything that I need to announce? Justin, Keith? We don't know what we don't know. But I do know that Justin's going to pray for us.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Justin Yon. For those who don't know me, the rector at St. Francis in the Field, and about to enter into my third and final year on the standing committee. I want to just emphasize final year on the standing committee. It's actually not been bad. It's been a joy, but it's so good to have you all here this evening to learn about what we're doing and just to care. You know, it's so important just to care. So the Lord be with you. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we give thanks for this evening, this opportunity to be together for the work and mission and ministry and what you are doing in the lives of so many in the Diocese of Florida. So we come together to prepare for our annual gathering, open our hearts and minds to conversation and dialogue, but above all, draw us together in relationship as we are one body in you, and remind us that we're all moving in the right direction and rowing the boat for the mission of the kingdom here in the Diocese of Florida. Be with Keith and the staff as they prepare for this weekend, or not this weekend, but next weekend, and all the things that lie before us as we move towards electing a new bishop. We ask all your most holy and blessed name. Amen.
Okay, you keep that, because that's going to be our pastor. Good evening. As I was just cutting up with Justin, we would like for you to speak from the microphone, which Father Justin will move around for us. And the reason for that is not that we can't hear one another, because we can pretty well hear one another in this beautiful place, but this is being live streamed. This is the second of our 3 pre-convention meetings. It is being live streamed, and we'd love for the folks who listen in to be able to hear your comments and questions. So please do use the microphone as you move forward. The presentation is not behind me, which it was last Thursday at Holy Comforter. So if I occasionally do this, it's just write it off as being a nervous twitch. My name is Keith Daw. It's my great privilege to serve you as your employee as the Chief Operating Officer of the Diocese of Florida. And I will be the person running you through tonight's presentations, along with Mother Laura McGevney, who is the co-chair of our nominations committee, and her committee's done a particularly fabulous job this year, their committee. And also Bob, our treasurer, Bob White, our treasurer. Of course, there are 2 Bob Whites. He's not Fernandina Bob White, he's Church of Our Savior Bob White. Always important to identify. So the first thing we're going to do tonight is I'm going to walk us quickly through what we'll be doing tonight, and then I'll be talking a little bit about the actual convention agenda. After we talk about the convention agenda, I will lead us through a summary of the resolutions. We have at least one, I don't see Rick here, but we have at least one member of our resolutions committee here, Father Wiley Ammons, and I will, from time to time as we go through the resolutions, invite his comments or additions if he wants to supplement anything that I've shared with you. I would also note to you that the resolutions page on the convention page on the diocesan webpage has a really great summary that Wiley primarily authored that talks about the work of the Charter and Canons Committee, which would be relate to the first 7 resolutions, but we'll come back to that when we get to the resolutions. Then Mother Laura will come and walk us through the nominations for the various offices Bob will come and do the financial summary for you. And I got to tell you, he's coming in on a cloud because Holy Comforter team, the folks who came last Thursday, were really thrilled with the financial summary, and I think you'll find he did a really good job on it. Now, if you're following along on the presentation slides on your phone or a hard copy, which I hope you are, because again, we're not projecting, we're on slide 4 now, and it shows us as having a Q&A portion at the end, which we will. We'll wrap up before adjournment with a question and answer session. But I really want you also, while it's fresh on your mind, and we go through the various resolutions particularly, or there may not be questions during nomination section, but as we go through Bob's portion, please do interrupt the speaker. Because sometimes it's better to ask the question while it's fresh on your mind instead of waiting to a Q&A session at the end. So it is, I like to say about my late father and his dessert choices, I'd like either, but I'll take both. So both are available to you, both question and answer at each portion and at the end. Okay, so let's now go over to slide 7, if you're following along. I'm going to put on my glasses so I can see better. And we're going to talk about what we'll be doing during each portion of the day, beginning next Friday evening and going through the day on Saturday. Mother Rachel, brain just went dead. Hall, thank you. Hill, has done a beautiful job of leading the worship at leading the worship planning for our convention. And there are more worship and prayer soaking opportunities than I think we've probably ever had before. So I really encourage you, as you come to participate in convention, to afford yourself of those. We're starting off with Holy Eucharist. We are then the next morning before check-in even opens, before the first continental breakfast item is laid out on the breakfast tables, we're going to start with morning prayer in Mandy's chapel. And then we're going to end, and I forgot one thing, we're going to end Friday night with Compline in Mandy's chapel. So there are going to be lots of wonderful prayer and worship opportunities, and I encourage you to participate in those. Friday night will also include a Low Country Boil with the Low Country Boil team from St. Francis in the Field cooking for us. And then, as I said, we'll have Compline after that. The next morning, on Saturday, again, we're going to begin with morning prayer. We'll have a continental breakfast. We're trying to have as many protein options as we can work into a continental breakfast, because there are those of us who try to avoid carbs lest they put us to sleep. The breakfast will open at 8:45, and check-in, because you're all pre-registered, will open at 9. I really encourage you to get there, get checked in, and as a matter of fact, there is a italicized, somewhat of a footnote about 10 o'clock in the call to order, which is the Sarah Minton italicized footnote or endnote. Be in your seats. So please do plan to get there so that you have plenty of time to get in your seats before we commence at 10 o'clock. We'll have some very special opening worship. We'll have a report on the work she's done with us for over a year now by Bishop Mary Gray Reeves. We'll do the traditional credentialing, introduction, privileges, all of the normal convention commencement things. We'll have a report from Mother Sarah as president of the standing committee. And we're doing resolutions in the morning after that. And that is an intentional change, because folks have asked us to please not do resolutions when they have full tummies for lunch. So we're doing resolutions in the morning. So again, watch your carbs at breakfast. Then throughout the morning, we'll have various reports and ministry reports. Paul will probably be making a report. Bob will be making a report at some point during the day. And then we'll go, and as we are required by our rules of order, we'll have, excuse me, at noon, we'll have the prayer for mission and ministry, and then we'll probably right immediately after that move into lunch. If we're still in the middle of a resolution matter, for example, and we've got to get through resolutions before we break for lunch, we might not break for lunch right at noon, but again, the agenda is built in a way that allows that flexibility. Then in the afternoon, if we haven't had it in the morning, we'll have financial reports, more on diocesan ministries and committees. Then we'll move into elections in the afternoon. The incoming president of the standing committee will share some thoughts with you. We'll have a ministry commissioning time, which is going to be really beautiful. And then we will have closing remarks, prayer, and adjourn. Hey, Father Vic, don't mean to bug you, but if you want to pull up the documents, there's a QR code for that. And if you're not a QR code person, there's hard copies in the way back. They're bringing you the QR code now. Sorry. And glad you're here. Glad you're here. I bet traffic was crazy. Y'all come on in. Okay, so any questions on the agenda, the flow of the day, anything like that? Great. Seeing none, we're going to move to resolutions. Again, I would love for you to, if you have a question on a resolution, to raise your hand, use the mic, and throw the question out as we go, rather than waiting to the end, because again, your question may be better, more easily formed, framed, etc. So the first resolution, and again, the first 7 resolutions that are pre-approved to go onto the agenda, or to be part of our agenda, came out of the very good work of the Charter and Canons Committee. I had the privilege of sitting again this year as their scribe, and they just do fabulous work. And it's so neat to watch a group with a mission coalesce in their mission. They are so knit together, so to speak, that they are actually continuing their work after convention to do more and more improvement to our canons, and I just really salute them for that. A great group doing great work. And some of these resolutions, as we go through them, will seem pretty simple to you, and it might surprise you that you see them as a single-purpose standalone resolution. That was intentional on their part, to break them into single-purpose resolutions so that they can, so that they don't slow us down or bog down or require unnecessary, complicated conversation by trying to have too many subjects under consideration at a single time. So again, they've done great work. Now what you'll see also is that of the 9 resolutions that are pre-approved to come to the floor a week from now on Saturday, are all amendments to canon except 2. One is an amendment to the election rules that we adopted in June, and one is what I consider to be a normative resolution. That is, it expresses an encouraging direction or an encouraging statement. Kind of be careful about calling it a direction, because it's really, if adopted, it's really the communication of convention to the congregations of our diocese. It's not a requirement per se as much as an encouragement, and we'll get to that in just a minute. Again, the first 7 resolutions came out of Charter and Canons. If you're following along in the presentation through the QR code, if you'll note on the proposed resolution slide, which is slide 10, there's a link there to the resolution site on the page that I mentioned earlier. So, first resolution. The first resolution affects 4 canons of the canons, our diocesan canons. And the real purpose of it is something that we've needed to do really since the first non-January convention in November of 23. And that is to adjust the provisions of canons to address the fact that, at least for now, we are not having conventions in January, because so many of the provisions in there and were timed off of the convention being in January really frustrate the ability to properly credential us and get us ready to hold a convention. And a lot of that had been identified through you, through the congregations of the diocese, but it really came to a really solid focus, not only through the work of this committee, but also through our credentialing for the bishop election rules. So this is a way to get our house further in order to prepare us for next September, when we will be holding a convention to elect a bishop, as well as holding an annual convention. Next year's a 2-day festival. I'm not going to go through every single change, but in these 4 canons, again, the primary purpose of the edits is to clarify things that have to happen with respect to the election of delegates, the holding of meetings, etc., with outside a January convention tradition. So this is kind of mostly cleanup. There also some work that was done in these to simplify some of the language of the existing canons on the selection of delegates and alternates, as you'll see there in Canon 2, and to clarify the communication back from the delegates to their congregations. So again, just some good clarifying work in this resolution number 1. I'm going to pause and see if y'all have any questions about it. Father Chris. Hold on. We got to get in touch with our live stream. Oh, sorry, am I wandering from the mic?
That was actually exactly my feedback that I was going to relay to you, is that what I'm hearing from folks who are participating via live stream is that they would like for you to be closer to the microphone so that they can hear you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I hate microphones. So thank you. And Chris, you and I go way back. So if you get more feedback, just, send me a move to the microphone heart. Thanks, guys. Anything else on Resolution 1? Thank you. Okay, Resolution 2. As you'll recall from the special meeting in June, if you were present there, one of the questions that came up in the special rules, because the special rules pulled over the language of canon to present who are the delegates for the election of a bishop. One of the things that we talked about, and one thing we did, was to remove this kind of amorphous, unclear category of lay delegates called delegates at large. Some folks reacted suspiciously to that category. Many of us just kind of did the dog hearing a whistle look, because it didn't really seem to serve a wonderful purpose. So you may remember that actually one of the few edits to the election rules was to remove this concept of delegates at large. So one of the things the committee did was to make that even more official, so to speak, by making the same edit or corresponding edit in the canons of the diocese. And while we were there, another clarifying edit that was identified was to identify that the category of delegates comprised of deputies to General Convention don't just evaporate after the year of convention. That category of delegates to our convention, who are deputies to, and the first alternate, to General Convention, continue in place until their successors are elected. So that way, in, say, General Conventions in year 1, year 2 and 3, those same folks are in place until potentially, or it's projected generally, in year 3, they're replaced by the elections of deputies for a General Convention in year 4. So again, just clarifying language to identify who our lay delegates are. Any questions on Resolution 2? All righty. Moving on to Resolution 3. This is a very simple one, but again, one that came up through comment. I think this one actually may have come through some suggestions that former canon to the ordinary Bob Griffiths may have published, if I remember correctly. Father Wiley, do you remember, is this one of those? I thought so. Thank you. So this is just to, again, clarify the requirement, which we've been in the habit of doing recently, but we want to make sure it's in canon to be perpetuated, that the Convention Journal will be available electronically to the diocese, not just you come down to the library room at the diocese and read it from the dusty shelf. So that's a very simple resolution, just again, requiring that to be done electronically as we have been. Now, Resolution 4 begins to get a little, oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Hannah. Could we get the microphone to Hannah? I apologize, Hannah. I didn't see your hand.
Hannah Barton, Church of Our Savior. My question is, will past journals, I understand 2018 is the most recent that we have available online, will 2019 to 24 be available as well online, or are we simply going to pick up with 25?
I thought that 19 through 24 are available, but if they're not, would you shoot me an email?
Sure.
Please, and because, honey, I thought 19...
We have until 22, 23 and 24, they are not out yet.
Okay, so apparently, according to the brains of the operation, we've got through 22 up, but the short answer is yes. We will make sure that we are current as we move along. And stay after us, please.
Thank you.
Yeah, good question. Thank you. Okay, so again in Resolution 4, we begin to get a little more fun. And I'm going to particularly invite Father Wiley to share any comments that he'd like to on this, because this has been the subject of a lot of healthy conversation within the diocese. And the subject matter is precisely the use of participation by electronic means. Just by way of a little bit of history, and this is just the gospel according to Keith, this isn't, carved in stone anywhere. Beginning in the 22 elections, we had quorum issues, and there were several ways that were identified to address quorum issues. One, which is something that we were woefully behind on, but thanks be to God, Hani and a lot of our other members of our team have done a beautiful job of correcting this. We were way behind on being clear about canonical residence and cure. And we were also not clear about our clergy delegates and the being clear about how clergy delegates were qualified to, within the canons. Now, we did some great work on that. The Charter and Canons Committee did some great work on clarifying who the clergy delegates were. We reintroduced the lovely archaic term of cure, but we did so with a definition. And we really, the committee really in that effort, solved most of the quorum problem we learned through last fall's convention, or actually, I guess it was through last fall's convention, because the standing committee had preliminarily adopted the concept of cure for the 23 convention and expressed how it, as ecclesiastical authority, would be interpreting the canons. And then you as a body, the convention, adopted a very close, very similar definition or provisions for the clergy delegates. And that really dealt with quorum tremendously well. So big kudos to the committee. The other way that was identified in the 22 election was to potentially make electronic participation available so as to be able to establish quorum with those who were far-flung, not in health, able to come to convention, that sort of thing. So we did belt and suspenders in the 24 convention. We adopted both sets of ideas. And it turns out we learned through the exercise of the 25 special meeting that we really didn't need to do both. And that in fact, Zoom, while we were able to make it work relatively effectively, it really was inordinately expensive, didn't really add that much value, and actually it was the consultation of the presiding bishop's team that it's risky because it can create questions, create fodder for objections as to whether or not the ballots are truly secret. Hang on, I'll get to you. And Father Wiley, in the report that he wrote for the committee, really did a great job of explaining what the committee did and looking at this, what the committee's considerations were, and why the committee is proposing this amendment. So I really, if there's a particular place, if you don't read anything else in the report from the Charter and Canons Committee, I really urge you to read this, because that explanation is much better than what I just said. So hang on, the mic's coming to you, Father Matt.
Thank you, Justin. One of the things that came up at the River Region Clericus was the hey, this disenfranchises the little churches that can't get there. I think it would be helpful if we mentioned how much money is saved if we don't do this. So I know you know the answer, but I did not.
Hania
I will
may
say
actually.
this on the microphone. When you say it to me, I will repeat it.
I know a good estimate of the figure, but I think Keith was about to say Hania has an exact estimate.
Do you have that number in your head, Hania?
For the Zoom thing,
What the Zoom cost us?
the part of the Zoom is not as much as all the things that are implied because, for example, what we are looking is to the voting part. Because right now, the only way, I'm sorry.
You're going to say more than he can repeat. Hold on, folks online. We got a big
Thank you,
answer coming.
Justin. I was up here taking shorthand.
Thank you. Well, with the amount itself is not as much as the PRI, but it's like around, I don't want to say numbers because I don't want to. But the thing is, all that is implied on that one, and the biggest risk is the voting part.
Yes.
Because with the voting part, we are doing it right now with poll, and that is not as secure, and that, that can present a lot of problems for people.
Right. Cost
That will
was,
increase the prices if we need to go that other route.
correct. Cost was material as to the cost of convention. So say convention costs $100,000. It was on the order, if I remember correctly, and I can get the data on this better. Zoom added to the June meeting probably an additional cost on the order of $15,000 to $20,000.
Okay, that's a helpful thing. Thank
Sure.
you.
Hania, please make a note and let's make sure we have that fact. And we'll address that specifically tomorrow night on the Zoom. Would you help me remember to do that tomorrow? And additionally, people say, well, it's not that expensive to add in a Zoom. No, the problem is that because our charter requires secret ballot, the way that we were able, with current technology, to collect the votes of the folks on Zoom, as Hania alluded to, was by a poll taken by hands raised on a what I call Brady Bunch screen. And the problem is that if our Zoom participants can see each other's hands, they immediately have lost their right to a secret ballot. So that's one issue that really became, at least from my perspective, based on the advice and counsel that we received from the presiding bishop's office, that's the biggest issue. Because particularly as we go into a bishop election, we don't want to in any way create any failure to provide exactly what sort of election we're required to provide. It is frustrating because for those, I think we had 14 this summer. For those 14 folks, there were several who y'all probably can sit here and identify who weren't mainly convenience folks. We did have a handful of folks who were not on. Probably of the 14, I guess we maybe had 5 or 6 who are what I would call convenient Zoomers. We really tried to discourage convenient Zoomers because we were really trying to get a sense of how necessary the ability was. There were correspondingly, out of the 14, probably maybe 2 who were, I don't like to drive, and probably the balance. So we're talking about maybe half, 6 or 7, who were real physical infirmities. We had some even within the clergy who were fighting disease and didn't need to be exposed to other people at that point. They were particularly vulnerable at that point. And a couple who had permanent vision impairment, that sort of thing. So, you know, what that boils down to, and I hate to present this as a matter of economics, but you're talking about spending $14,000 for, or 15 or whatever it was, you're right at $1,000 a head. And when you don't have to do that for quorum, it becomes a cost-benefit analysis that unfortunately we need to make because we are not infinite in funds, as our friend Bob will tell us later on in the evening. But anyway, again, I encourage you to read Father Wiley's work in the report of the committee. He really does a much better job than I just did of explaining it. But remember this subject because we'll come back to it again in a couple of resolutions. Anything else on Resolution 4? Great, thank you. Resolution 5 is another pretty simple one. Again, I believe this was a comment that came potentially out of former Canon Griffiths' suggestions. He had several that the committee was able to say, yeah, that's a great idea. And again, we tried to do everything single purpose. They tried to do everything single purpose as they wrote their resolutions and as their scribe wrote them for them. And this simply requires that the standing committee is keyed in to what's happening in the diocese. And the goal is and of course, for the last 2.5 years, our friends on the standing committee would have been delighted to only have one meeting per quarter as opposed to one meeting every other week, or more frequently sometimes. So this simply, again, is a cognizant standing committee amendment so that when we again have a bishop diocesan, she or he is supported by a council that is involved and knows what's going on in the diocese. So from annual to quarterly. Any questions, comments on Resolution 5? Great. Now, remember I told you on Resolution 4 to remember the concepts. What this resolution does is it does not amend canon, it amends the special rules for election of a bishop that you adopted this summer. And it's a belt and suspenders, this seems to be my metaphor tonight. It's a belt and suspenders measure so that there's no confusion that if it doesn't exist in canon, which is what would happen with Resolution 4, then it also doesn't exist in the special rules, because if it existed in the special rules and didn't in canon, it might create an ambiguity that confused us as we come to elect a bishop next year. So again, this is to make things parallel, this concepts of meeting and quorum parallel between the special rules and the canons. Now, one thing that I would note that I failed to do back at Resolution 4 is folks are going to, and have already begun to make arrangements to participate a week from Saturday by Zoom. And we don't want them in their good work to be present with us to suddenly be disenfranchised at the moment that Resolution 4 passes. So both Resolution 4 and this resolution, Resolution 4, not this resolution, will not be effective until the adjournment of this convention. So if I'm Joe Brown, I'm tied in by Zoom to convention, I don't lose the right to vote on the elections in the afternoon. I continue to be a participating lay delegate throughout all of that day. So again, great care by our friends on the Charter and Canons Committee. Any questions on 6 and its amendment of the special rules? Okay, then lastly, as it relates to the work of the Charter and Canons Committee, interestingly, this concept actually arose through the very good work of the Camp and Conference Center Committee. Because for some reason, and I kind of understand it intellectually, but it doesn't really make sense to me, our canons provide that, as they exist right now, that if there's both a chair by virtue of office and a chair by appointment, that the appointed chair doesn't have a vote on the committee. Now, it is a concept in our canons that the bishop diocesan is on all committees and sits as chair. If the bishop asked Joe Brown to work his tail off and be the chair of a committee, but then Joe is not allowed to vote on the matters that he's worked so hard on, it just doesn't make sense. And that's one thing, again, that came out of the practical, horribly good work of our friends on the Camp and Conference Center Committee, is we had a man who was spending lots of volunteer hours, but technically did not have a vote under canon on the committee on which he was working. So that's what Canon 11 really primarily addresses, is the rights of a committee chair to also vote on that committee. Any questions about Resolution 7? Sir, hang on while our lovely microphonist gets there.
So what you've effectively done, if I'm hearing this right, is you've clarified that ex officio means by means of the office. It doesn't mean you have the job without a vote, which is what it always meant. But we, for some reason, had a lot of confusion. I think every church's bylaws had a bunch of those committees. Yeah, okay.
Okay, so that ends the work of the Charter and Canons Committee. And they've, again, done fabulous work, formed a great community and committee, and will be continuing their work by their own volition into the fall to work for us for next year. And I believe part of that work is going to include, if I remember correctly, Father Wiley, some open sessions where they invite us from the diocese to come and talk to them about both what they're doing and what is of concern to us. So again, kudos, kudos, kudos to that committee. Now, you'll remember at last year there was a single resolution brought forward regarding youth participation. The resolution did not come to the floor, but it was widely thought and expressed that Charter and Canons should look at that proposed resolution and work with those who had brought it forth to bring it forth again this year, but in a time that it could be considered and actually come to the floor of right. This is a very kind of fine point, is that a resolution can't come to the floor of right unless it's vetted and prepared and published 60 days in advance, which is part of our rules of order. If you're digging through canons to find that, you won't. It's in our rules of order. So what that same group did, the same group which is our General Convention deputation, is they took their resolution that they proposed last year and split it into two pieces. One piece is canon amending. One piece is not canon amending, but as I described it earlier, is more normative in nature. What you see in front of you, it's not captioned as the actual sheet. If you pull it up on the page, does not have the words Resolution 8 at at the top of it like the first 7 do. But it's identified so that you can tell which one's 8 and you can tell which one's 9. So when I speak of them, I'm going to speak of them as resolutions 8 and 9. Resolution 8, as I said, amends canon and includes the concept of a youth member on diocesan council. And as it says here, that would be a youth member aged 16 or 17, because in the Episcopal Church, a communicant 16 and above is an adult, would be elected by the diocesan council. So they would, the remaining voting members, which currently are 13 and would be a different 13 if we had a bishop diocesan. If we have a bishop diocesan, that person, the bishop, has a vote and the standing committee chair does not. If we don't have a bishop, the standing committee chair has a vote. So we always have 13 other votes. Those 13 would elect, under this resolution, amending canon, 1 youth member. And then the balance of the edit is in bold on the second page, or the back of the page, which speaks to the term of the diocesan council youth member, which is 1 year. So any questions about resolution 8? Justin sprang to his feet with the microphone.
Yes. Just curious, has anybody done any research on the liability that this youth or the youth's family would incur if there was legal action involving the diocesan board? Like, for example, we're kind of in the midst of at the moment.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
I have not done that research.
That's a concern that I have.
Sure. I am not Father Charlie, but all of our diocesan officers are covered by director and officer insurance. We insure all the standing committee members, everybody under D&O insurance.
So, Lisa Miro, rector of St. Andrew's Episcopal Church. In my former life, I was an insurance defense litigator. And I would say that if it was anything contractual, those under 18 cannot be held to a contract. And if it was anything negligent, they probably would not be held unless we could, if it went beyond the level of negligence to the point of being intentional infliction. But that would be pretty hard standard to bear there, so.
Father Eric?
Eric Call, chaplain to the retired clergy, and clergy delegate from Christ Church. Following up on what Charlie was asking, I think that we've tried to do this in the past, and not only this diocese, but other dioceses. And the issue is, in the state of Florida, can somebody under the age of 18 serve legally on a board that makes decisions that have to do with property, legal matters, etc. For not-for-profits. I think it has to do with state law. So
Sure.
Somebody might do some research on that.
I have thoughts as a recovering 37-year lawyer, but because of my relationship with the Florida Bar right now, I'm not going to say anything, but I follow all of you. Anybody else have a thought, comment? And I think these are great questions. I just want to applaud you for the consideration of them. I urge you to do the research and be prepared for a week from Saturday so that we can talk intelligently with one another about that. Right now, we've got our chancellor pretty busy, so respectfully, I apologize. I'm not going to ask the chancellor to do any work on it at this time, but you have chancellors in your own congregations. Feel free to reach out to those folks to support you in your thoughts on this. Father Charlie?
I'd just like to raise another question related to this. I think it's worth all of us thinking about. But I've served on multiple diocesan boards over the 30 years of ministry that I've been in, and some of the most contentious meetings I've ever been in have been on a diocesan board, where you see unfortunately, some of the more difficult aspects of church life and some things that can be quite disturbing even to the most seasoned of adults that I've often heard, and I've seen this with vestries too, but where people kind of lose their faith in a sense because of the politics of the church that manifest themselves in boards. And so I just think I love the idea of getting our young people involved in the church. I just think we ought to give this really serious thought as to whether this is wise.
Thank you. Anybody else? Oh, sorry, I didn't see you, Mother Laura.
Laura McGabney, Christ Church. I just want to counter that by saying I grew up in the United Methodist Church, and I was the president of our conference youth. And through some other works I did in our essentially diocese, I sat on different boards as a youth member of the board. And it was an incredibly life-giving experience and a growth experience. I'm not saying that that's the only consideration in this, but I guess I hear what you're saying, Charlie, and my hope would be that these meetings would be something that we would all be able to come together, even in the midst of really intense disagreements, in love, and it would model the way Christians work through difficult decisions, and that would be a life-giving experience for our youth.
Thank you, Mother Laura. Anybody else?
I just have to ask, have they been life-giving for any of us? Have they really?
Yes, at times.
Just to jump off of that, would any of you act any more Christian if you had young people watching you in the room?
I'm sure that was a rhetorical question, not any of us's.
Take a poll.
Sure. Anybody else? Sorry, I put my glasses on, can't see. Anybody else? Okay, great. Thank you very much. Now, again, that's the end of the pre-approved, that is pre-approved to come to the floor. Resolutions through 8. The last resolution is not amending of any body of writing. So the first 8, 1 amends the special rules, 7 amend canon, and the last one, again, is encouraging what I consider normative, as in, this is a really good idea. So the last one is similar in nature, in spirit, to 8, but it speaks to our congregations and encourages our congregations to incorporate youth into their governance. Okay, so again, not a canon changing, but simply a normative. We think this is a good idea. So if adopted, then convention, which is the ultimate body of our church in the Diocese of Florida, is saying to its constituent members, this is a good idea. So that's all that 9 does.
I have received word that there is a Florida statute which does say that on a 501c3, one director may be 15 years of age or older, if so permitted in the Articles of Incorporation or bylaws or by resolution of the Board of Directors.
That was the comment I was about to make. It's section 67, or it's chapter 617, section 802. We incorporated chapter 617 into the canons last year because they're the part of Florida law governing nonprofits.
Right. It's the article of our statutes that addresses not-for-profit corporations.
Yeah, and that was the section of the statutes that Charter and Canons was working with on approving this resolution. And when we reviewed the resolution, it was considering that in state law. That said, we did not review all of Florida state law, but certainly 617-802 permits it.
The question about, it appears that this is going to be an election and an appointment by the standing committee.
Beg pardon?
right?
8, on resolution 8, it's by diocesan council. They elect from their own body. I mean, from,
Is there any other position that the diocesan council can also elect?
yes,
Okay.
they fill any
So this
vacancy.
would not be an exception.
They fill any vacancy,
This is an addition.
yes.
Is there
But
any other
this is
additions that
this would
diocesan-
be, to my recollection, and Father Wiley, tell me if you think of any other, this would be the only section of canon where a body other than vacancy elects one of their members. Obviously, if diocesan council has a vacancy, diocesan council elects its member, its vacant member, so it wouldn't be unusual in that regard.
So diocesan council is convention and recess,
It is, yes.
and so the council also approves all appointees to committees as well.
No. I'm sorry, I spoke too soon. To committees, yes.
Yes, that's
Commissions, no.
That's correct. Yes. So the idea was that convention could well elect the member
Sure.
of this youth member of council. We did not want to subject youth members of diocesan council to convention-wide election, and so we put it to diocesan council.
Why?
The question from Father Charlie is why Wiley?
Nice job. Nice microphone in there, dude.
Thanks. So the short answer is that this was the proposal as it came to us from the movers of the resolution.
Right.
And the movers of the resolution are the ones for whom this was a passionate cause. Charter and Canon's job was to review the resolution for propriety and format and make suggestions. And so,
Which they did.
yeah, I don't mean it to be a cop-out to say it wasn't our idea. It wasn't our idea, and we didn't object to the resolution as proposed.
Which, just as a friendly footnote, is exactly what the rules of order requires. Is for if a resolution affects canon, it not only has to come in and be in time to be published. If it affects canon, it has to be routed through charter and canons. Which is why you may notice, just because Jack Tull's cool like that our resolutions call that we put out calls for resolutions to be submitted greater than 60 days so that charter and canons, if it affects canon, has an opportunity to review it. Now, they knew that this was coming well in advance of that, so they actually had a rather fulsome amount of time to look at 8 and 9. I love when the process works. I'm such a geek. Anybody else? Okay. It is my great pleasure to invite Mother Laura to come up. And as she's coming up, I would just point out to you that there's yet another QR code. And that QR code you don't have to use. Thank you, Father Justin. You don't have to use right now. But if you want to know more about any of the nominees that Mother Laura's about to discuss with you, you can actually pull their bios up. The bios were published when her committee's report was published, but in this format, we don't present the bios at pre-convention meeting, but you can access them. Okay? Mother Laura.
Oh, that's so good. Thanks. Listen, I'm just so happy to be here, and I just want to say it was a really great process working with the wonderful Father William Stokes and the rest of our committee as we pulled together a slate of candidates that were willing to stand. And I also want to start by saying thank you. Thank you to everyone who submitted their name. Back to our comments about youth, I think that inside most of us, there is a middle school student who doesn't necessarily want to put their name up and to stand in election in front of a room of their peers. And yet people have done it because they feel called to serve the diocese. And with that in mind, I hope that we keep all of these candidates in our prayers as we go forward into convention. And with that, if you would like to turn actually to our first slate of candidates is for the Diocesan Council. So if you look on page 25. So the Diocesan Council has to be elected one clergy member for a 3-year term. The candidates are the Reverend Wiley Ammons from Redeemer, Jacksonville, the Reverend Joe Gibbs from Church of Our Savior, Jacksonville, and the Reverend Quinn Harmon from All Saints, Jacksonville. For the Diocesan Council, there are 2 lay delegates that will be lay members that will be elected, one for the River region and one for the Appalachia region. Now, I'm going to say that on 27, if you look at that point in your deck, they're mixed up because the names are in alphabetical order, but I'm going to read them by region just to make it a little bit clearer. You can look at their pictures as we do so. So for the Appalachia region, we have James Fort, Amy Johnson, and Lauren Soto. James Fort is from St. Michael and All Angels, Tallahassee. Amy Johnson is from Holy Comforter, Tallahassee. And Lauren Soto is from St. John's, Tallahassee. For the River region, we have John Currington from St. Mark's, Palatka. Bob Hood from Holy Communion, Hawthorne. And Meredith Schwartz from Trinity Parish, St. Augustine. The Disciplinary Board, everyone's favorite. So for the Disciplinary Board, we are electing one clergy member for a 3-year term. And the nominees are the Reverend Terry Calano. Y'all, it's McGevney, so I'm going to mispronounce some people's names, but I apologize. And she is at St. Mary's Green Cove Springs, and the Reverend Ken Johnston from St. Luke's Live Oak in Santa Fe. For the Disciplinary Board, we are going to be electing one lay member for a 3-year term. The nominees are Gina Donahue from St. Mark's, Jacksonville, and Fred Coberlin from St. James, Lake City. For the Standing Committee. So for the Standing Committee, for clergy, we are electing actually someone for a 3-year term and someone for a 2-year term. And that is going to be the same in the lay order as well. The reason you may remember is that last year, both our candidate for the clergy and the lay position had to withdraw. And so those positions were filled, and we then are having an election that for a 1-year position. And so we're filling that with a 2-year position. So the Standing Committee nominees for clergy 3-year term are the Reverend Kurt Benham from Trinity Parish, St. Augustine, the Reverend Lisa Mira from St. Andrews, Jacksonville, and the Reverend Roy Tuff from Holy Trinity, Gainesville. The clergy nominees for the 2-year term are the Reverend Bob Goolsby from St. Thomas Palm Coast, and the Reverend Deacon Marcia Holmes from Christ Church, Ponte Vedra. For the Standing Committee lay positions, for the 3-year term, we have the following. Pam Jordan Anderson from St. John's, Tallahassee. Bob Bune from St. Mary's Green Cove Springs. Aurelia Donaldson from St. Philip's, Jacksonville. Glenn Geiler from St. John's Cathedral, Jacksonville. Bob Hood from Holy Communion, Hawthorne. And Mary Dudley White from St. Mark's, Jacksonville. The lay nominees for the 2-year position are J. Byron Green from St. Michael and All Angels, Tallahassee. Caroline Nichols from St. John's Cathedral, Jacksonville, Anne Seraphine from Holy Trinity, Gainesville, Jack Tull from Christ Church, Ponte Vedra, and Rhonda Drackett-Williams from St. Paul's, Federal Point. Finally, we have the Swanee Board of Trustees. We will be electing one lay member of that board for a 3-year term. And the nominees are Cortland Irick from St. Mark's, Jacksonville, and Marissa Lingaitis from St. John's Cathedral, Jacksonville. You may notice that you do not have a nominee slate for the 2027 General Convention deputies, and that is because the clock is ticking, my friends. There is still 24 hours, a little bit less, in which you too can decide that you would like to put your name in and volunteer to be one of our deputies to travel to beautiful Phoenix, Arizona in July. Yes, I'm selling it. We will be electing 4 clergy deputies and 4 lay deputies and 1 alternate, so a total of 5 people. So again, clock is ticking, 5 o'clock tomorrow, ding dong, it's done. So if you are interested in that, self-nominate. Let us know. Let people vote on you. Are there any questions about any of the nominations? Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mother Laura. Appreciate you running us through those. Now it's my pleasure to call on our wonderful treasurer, Bob White from Church of Our Savior, to walk us through the financial report, as we'll be hearing more about it at convention. I have your draft here too, in case you need to cross-reference. Okay.
Good early evening. My name is Bob White. I attend and worship at the Church of Our Savior, just 5 or 6 miles south of here, if you've ever been there. If not, come visit. Last year was my first convention as your treasurer, as I came on board in January of 24. And despite my best efforts, I remain your treasurer. And will be in attendance in a couple of weeks at the next convention. I apologize for my appearance. I look like I got off a golf course, which is completely untrue with this weather. But I've been stacked up since 9 a.m. and my first 2 meetings were very casual. So be that as it may. I was telling Quentin Parman, the rector, that this is kind of pleasure for me because I was an active parishioner at All Saints for about 12 years back in the 90s and early 2000s, and knew Lisa when she was a kid and knew Wiley when he was a college student, so that says something about me. Last September we met and we had the financials through July. We didn't have them through the end of the year because it was September. So I wanted to first talk about how we ended up the year, and there's a schedule in your QR code or in your deck, whichever you have the pleasure to look at. We had about $2.67 million in revenues, $3.03 in operating expenses. And if you are good at arithmetic, which I'm sure most of you are, that produced what I call an operating loss of approximately $360,000. That's not so great, we'll get into that later, but we also had non-operating revenue of $490,000. So the surplus for 2024 was actually a positive $130,000. You may ask, well, what's with this non-operating revenue? Well, the diocese has long been assisted on the funding side by things like the foundation, the Nehemiah Fund, the endowment. Last year, it was principally the endowment, just under $200,000, and the foundation, just under $300,000. So that's why we have so when someone tells you we had a surplus and we killed it, and we didn't really kill it. We took money out of one pocket that we invest in and try to get returns, and we stuck it in another pocket that we pay bills with. And that's a topic to be discussed for quite some time, I think. So what about 2025? In one column, you see our budget for the year, which is a $60,000 deficit. And people always ask me in the church, because I'm the treasurer at my own church, well, why would you ever budget a deficit? Well, that's just kind of the way it comes out. I mean, you could always plug something and make it zero and say, see, we're nonprofit, we're just going to make zero. But sometimes it's a little above in the form of a deficit, sometimes it's a little above in the form of a surplus. So our actual through July, the bottom line is about a $20,000 deficit. Once again, we have an operating loss of approximately $430,000 on revenues of $1.5 million, and we have once again been the beneficiary of some non-operating revenue in the form of $308,000 from the endowment and approximately $100,000 from the foundation. So that's where we stand through July. Next thing I want to talk about, because I haven't received a lot of questions since I've been the treasurer, and I swear I'm very available if you ever have any, is what about debt in our diocese? Well, first of all, as we all kind of know, some like it, some don't like it, but it is what it is. The diocese owns all the assets, which includes, all the churches, all the property, and all that. So when we make a loan to a church, we are actually investing in our own property. Right now, we have about $145,000 in outstanding debt, with about 5 to 6 diocesan entities, and I say entity because they're not all churches, some missions and a college chapel. The terms range from 1 to 4 years. Note that all of these are funded with the Nehemiah Fund, which is the diocesan real estate fund. In the past, that fund has been used for a variety of things, including paying operating bills. That is a code no bueno anymore. We don't do it. The Nehemiah Fund can only be used for property loans and investments. So just make sure everybody understands that. Again, all of these are assets of the diocese. Now, what about the fact that some churches have mortgages? Well, since we own them, we have the pleasure of being the guarantor for those mortgages because they're technically liabilities of the diocese. We currently have about $7.5 million of mortgage debt in the diocese. That relates to 3 different churches. The terms range from 1 to 5 years. The churches are obviously responsible for servicing and paying these mortgages. We don't really get involved in that and hope to never get involved in that because the only reason we would is if somebody wasn't paying and the banks got upset. Note that the diocesan balance sheet has about $20 million of net assets, and I would submit to you that that's probably a very low number. Think of the gap between your assessed property value and what you actually know your market value is. It's usually a pretty big number, thankfully, because we'd rather pay taxes on the assessed value than the market value. So you really never know what something's worth until you actually put it on the market and sell it, and that's not what we're actively doing in most cases. So the balance sheet shows this $20 million in net assets. That would be a net equity number in a non-church universe. So we have a healthy amount of backing to be the guarantor for these loans. Let's talk about some other diocese financial issues that aren't necessarily number related, things we've been working on. Bear with me for a minute. Yeah, it is, but I got it right here. Just got my pages out of whack. When you print on both sides, sometimes you don't realize you just need to flip it over. First of all, we continue to improve the structure of the Finance and Investment Committee. We currently have 5 members. Matt Green is the chair. He works just at San Jose Episcopal down the road. Mark Armesto is from Quincy. He's an active member. Jackie Lunsford from Church of Our Savior. Myself and Don Woodrum, who, as we all know, is retired from St. Luke's at Live Oak. We are recruiting. We'd like to have 2 or 3 more members, so if you know anybody in any of your congregations who have a financial bent in their thinking and maybe just a little whacked out, we could probably use them. You have to be a little demented to do this kind of stuff, We also have been working on and are excited about a new investment policy. And when I say investment policy, I'm talking about the policy that will govern what our investment management company, which is Callan Investments or Callan Family Office, and how they invest the funds. So it talks about allocations between equity and bonds and so on and so forth. So we think we're pretty close to having that done. Would have been great to have that done for the convention, but just didn't make it. The two things that bothered me the most when I took this position was the fact that we were 4 to 5 years behind on our audits, and the fact that nobody seemed to pay attention to Camp Weed's finances, meaning there was no balance sheet, there was no profit and loss statement or income statement. It just didn't exist. You know, they had a consultant involved, and it kind of bothered me. And I was told that the way Camp Weed was run is you run it, and when there was a big hole, somebody made a phone call, and money magically appeared. And I'm talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. I'm not talking about, you know, a $5,000 check. Well, that connection between gaps at Camp Weed and making a phone call doesn't exist anymore. So Lori Sojourner and her staff, and some of us at the diocese, had been working very hard to pretty much put together a true financial package for the camp. So they're going to have a budget in 2026. We're going to have, what's that?
I'm sorry, they have a budget now.
Well, they have a budget now, but it just sort of got created. 26, the one in 2020, was it the one now kind of blessed, I guess? I was probably there and forgot it. But the 2026 will be the first full year budget that we have, and there'll be monthly reporting and, you know, variance analysis and all the things you're supposed to do when you're running an actual operational entity. So my two biggest concerns, I think, are being worked on well. As far as the audits, I'm just going to give you a tease because this will be discussed by Tom Paul, the audit chairperson at the convention. When I joined, we had not actually received the 2019 audit. And again, my first month was January 24, so you can do the math. That's somewhere between 4 and 5 years behind, which I thought, you know, took a lot of audacity, because I know that, like my church, if you're a month late, you get a phone call. Where's your audit? And then to find out that they hadn't had one for 5 years, just was a little annoying. And it really speaks to a lack of credibility for the diocese financially. So I have been a sort of a high horse guy on this, and you'll hear at the convention that we have made substantial progress. That's all I got to say about that. And I do want to say that two last things in closing my part of this meeting. One, I want to shout out to the Diocesan Controller, Nella Kastiov, and her assistant, Linda Thomas. We have a real juggernaut of a finance staff there. It's 2 people. And to be doing your day job with 2 people and also catching up on 3 and 4 years of audits is truly Herculean. If you've never done something like that in the audit world, don't try it. It's not fun. It's very difficult. But they have a lot of resolve, and we've made it a high priority, and they're getting it done. So thank you for that. And the last thing I'll say is, they don't like it when I say this, but you know, this model I talk about between operating revenue and non-operating revenue, that's not a sustainable model. I mean, you can't keep taking your investment assets to fund your light bills and salaries and things like that. So I see Peter Corbin here, and he's the chair of the budget committee, and we'll soon be teeing that up. And we have work to do because, again, that phone call is not happening right now because we don't have somebody to make them, to be honest with you. So that's my presentation. If you go to the convention, you'll probably hear an extremely similar one. But thanks for your attention and coming, and I appreciate it very much.
Any questions for Bob?
So I'm Ben Jones. I'm a retired associate priest at St. Mark's. I'm glad you mentioned the unsustainability of taking money from investments, because by my calculations, you're way over the 5% mark, and like by over $100,000 in 2024. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, how are you going to communicate this to the diocese in a way that people hear it, that this can't go on forever?
Well, I'll be pointing out, at least at the convention, in a very similar manner that I did today. The one thing I want to mention when you say 5%, you might be referring to the foundation. because foundations typically have a kind of a limit like that, or trusts have limits like that, because they like to underpromise and overdeliver. So they might distribute 4% and then be able to give you 5 maybe at the end of the year or something. You didn't see the foundation numbers on here because we don't run it, we don't own it. It's a separate corporation, has its own separate board. I do know there's a couple of $1 million in there. The foundation board is sort of in discernment over what they want to do with that money. I don't think any of us that are involved in the financials at the diocese believe that any substantial funds will be coming into the diocesan central office any longer. And we've already cut the Nehemiah fund from providing any operational support. So it's pretty much down to the endowment is the only thing that the diocese and the diocesan council control with respect to using that money. And of course, we'd much rather be using it for missions and outreach and not light bills and salaries. But I hope that answers your question.
Bob, I wanted to thank you again, and also to continue, my question was going to be about the foundation. Is there going to be a representative from the foundation available for questions, or are we treating them now just as a separate entity not involved in the convention?
You can answer that.
Don't go away, you may have other questions. The short answer is, I'm not aware that anyone from the foundation is attending convention. If you have questions of the foundation, please let me know and I will get you an answer. The foundation, I will say, has, over the last 2 years, since its non-diocesan members, as in those members who are not employees of the diocese, have been running the foundation, have really studied how they run and how they will run. So they take their responsibilities extremely seriously. If you're a super geek like me and you've read their charter and their bylaws, those documents are written from a very bishop-centric perspective. The role of the Bishop of Florida in their creation and administration was, or is, excuse me, very focal. And they have, they've come into assuming the role of running themselves, been very mindful of the sea change that is for them. So their chairman, John Baker, addressed us last year. I don't think he plans to come to convention this year. If I remember correctly, he's out of town, but I don't take that to the bank. But again, they are very interested in communicating with the diocese and the diocese population. They're not a closed book. They're very generous with their resources and their time. So if there's any question you have of them, please let me know, and I will be happy to relay it to them and get you an answer. But I don't believe that they will be presenting this year, because again, they did a pretty fulsome presentation last year. Anybody have any questions of Bob?
Just looking at this year, is the anticipation that we're moving toward about an $800,000 deficit for our operating revenues to expenses? And I mean, is that, looking at your July and just projecting it out, maybe that's not the best way to do it, but.
Yeah, Charlie, I don't think it's the best way to annualize it, because we had kind of some lumpiness up front where we took some of the investment funds and did some help at Camp Weed, some of their issues. And again, we're getting those financials, I think, under control. But I will say that they embedded in their projections right now are some assumptions about some donations and also some assumptions about assistance from the diocese, which we just had a meeting last week to talk about that. So there's a lot of issues still open there that we're trying to work through. So, but yes, without a continued help, I don't know what the number is, but it would be a deficit, sure.
Okay, Bob, one more from.
So just making sure I'm reading this right.
Our last year's actual income from operating revenue.
And this year is 7 months. So we're thinking.
I have this nervousness that our operating revenue decreased.
By $1 million plus.
That is not
the case. We're actually anticipating revenue up over the previous
this year.
Yes. But not by a lot.
Give us an option, I'll get the number.
In fact, I just have the budget here through July, so I think at the convention we should probably show the full year of my part.
Is it the diocesan board's responsibility or diocesan council's responsibility to bring the budget into line? Is that who generates the budget?
It's their responsibility to approve it.
To approve it? Okay.
Again, past practice has been, I hate to use the word plug, but past practice has been to use other funds that are non-operating to get a budget that's doable. And that's what I'm saying, that, if we had no fundraising and no other budget opportunities to make that better, you can do the math, run it out 5, 6, 7 years, and you're gonna run out. So the job is to obviously make sure that doesn't happen. I'm not 100% sure that's been happening, but it will.
I guess my point is the accountability for that falls. The accountability for that falls to the diocesan council.
Yes.
So that's something to take into consideration when you're thinking about who is nominated for the diocesan council, that the diocesan council does review the budgets and is looking at these things. So that it's just, when you think about what this body does and what types of people would be strong in that role.
They have some hard decisions ahead.
Yes.
For those online, it was hard decisions ahead, yes. I'm just killing time here, folks. I'm just killing time here. Emory University in Atlanta. I was asked where my training came from. I'm just killing time online, folks, while we do
So I told a teeny bit of a fib. The operational budget, not counting non-operating income, is going to be a little lower in 25. And one of the issues is we don't budget investment income. And I think in 24 that was a couple $100,000 because of rising markets. So you might say, well, that's a freebie, but you don't want to budget investment income because nobody knows what's going to happen. It could just as easily be a $100,000 loss. So, yeah, there's a lot of work to do. Yeah, 207 and 24. It's a lot of work to do, and we are doing our best to, you first have to kind of name the problem, understand the problem before you can fix the problem. Otherwise, you're just running around like a knee jerk. So that's why I mentioned that the budget committee this year has a lot of work to do. And I think there's going to be some difficult discussions about, well, how do you deal with an operating loss that you know you're going to have? And do you put together a budget that's flat because you plug it with $300,000 or $400,000 or $500,000 of non-operating revenue? You could. They could approve that, but it's not sustainable. Again, appreciate the opportunity to talk with you, and I'll see some of you soon.
Just to detail out a couple of those numbers for you again. The 24 budget, the budget adopted at the end of 23 for 24, projected the use of non-operating income from the foundation, Nehemiah, and the endowment in the amount of $744,000. The budget for 25 projects use of, again, Nehemiah has been declared, as it should be, off limits for operating usage. And the budget for 25 projects foundation support in the amount, which is committed, it's not just a projection, foundation support in the amount of $200,000 and endowment use in the amount of $527,000. So year over year, the projection for non-operating income is consistent. The good news, I'm a little Mary Sunshine, I'm going to find good news, is that, hang on one second, that to date through, wrong screen, sorry. Through July, we're beating the budget slightly on the use of non-operating income and on expense. But the problem with that is that we only draw non-operating support when we have to. So I can tell you that in August, the cash flow cycle for us is very interesting. We get fat early in the year. In the late summer, we tend to have a bunch of things hit because most of our mission support, our ministry support is quarterly, and there's something about the way that third quarter hits for us as compared to the remittances of pledges by our congregations, that we always have kind of this moment in August. It's not July, it's August. So you will see I don't think Nella's going to probably be able to have numbers ready for us next week through August. But you would see if you saw August that there is a draw both on the foundation support and on the endowment support. Just again, the gospel according to Keith for a minute. And this is just what I've learned in my year and a half serving you as our chief operating officer. The biggest issue, quite frankly, is that this diocese does not have an annual fund. We rely entirely upon, at the present time, without a bishop diocesan, we rely entirely upon our congregational pledge support and our non-operating support. I can't think of another not-for-profit entity that I'm aware of, that I'm involved with, that doesn't have an annual fund. It's ridiculous that we don't. Again, Keith's opinion. So I think as we all pray towards our next bishop, I will be praying, and I would ask you to consider praying, that not only do we find a bishop who will shepherd us, but a bishop who will look very deeply at how we're supported. Comparatively to most of our comparable dioceses, we have a tiny staff. There are 5 of us on the business side, 2 in finance, people services, Hania, who does everything, and me. And that's for a diocese of, depending on how you count it, 63 to 71 units. That's tiny. So again, we have a lot for our new bishop to lead us through in many ways. But I will be praying for a bishop with good business sense and an understanding of what it takes to run an enterprise, even a not-for-profit enterprise. By the way, at your next cocktail party, if you want something to talk about, there is no such thing in Florida as a nonprofit corporation. Florida corporations are not -for-profit. They're not nonprofit. So, just something geeky to bring up at a cocktail party. If you're still following, bless your hearts, on the handouts for tonight, either on your phone or a hard copy, please notice this page, which is our last page of substantive information. We are working so hard at the diocesan office to increase communication. The standing committee, from the moment it assumed ecclesiastical authority in the fall of 23, has had that as a super primary mission. And I just would encourage you to communicate this out to others. We've recently shared some bulletin inserts that we're trying to help people connect. On this page, you will see both a QR code to take us to social media. Those are the outside QR codes. And this one in the middle is labeled Diocesan Digest, and that's a little bit of a misnomer. Actually, that QR code will take you to sign up where you're getting our almost daily right now emails. So please spread this word. We have for an organization of our size, we have a decent, Deanna would probably shoot me for saying that, subscription, but we could greatly increase it. And again, the standing committee and our team are working very hard to communicate information out to you and to your parishioners, speaking to the clergy. So really, really, please connect in with us. And with that, we're done for the night. We look forward to seeing you at convention. We're so grateful to the wonderful folks here at All Saints for hosting us tonight. And again, if you have any question that comes up between now and next week, staff will be largely decamping to camp. We'll be decamping to Camp Weed probably in the Wednesday, Thursday time frame to get everything set up. Again, we're going to have some fun food this year. We're going to have served barbecue lunch on Saturday, and Friday night we're going to have the good folks of St. Francis come and do a low country boil for us. So, and wonderful worship that Mother Rachel Hill has put together. So come, please come together. Thank you. All done.